Hello, everybody. Welcome to a pretty boring panel. I mean, I know we are the only thing between you and lunch next, and after these exciting sessions in the morning, I'm pretty much aware that the attention span might not be there, but we will try to get as boring as possible, right? You know.
We'll give it our best shot.
Yeah, operations is boring by definition. So let me give you a flavor. I mean, the title is so mouthful that even I don't get all the buzzwords that are in. But let me share a story from yesterday. You know, so the first thing that I saw when I woke up was the title. You know, Biden trumps Trump. And I'm like, what the hell happened again, right? You know, so, and then I see that, you know, the new wave of tariffs are involved, etc., right? You know, so the direct implication for me as operation professional is that, you know, the plan and the strategy that we were working for the last year, you know, we should throw it away because of the basic assumptions are completely off the table. But then I ask, you know, what's the timing, right? You know, why is the timing of this tariff right now? I mean, the elections are so far, you know, there is no immediate effect there. And then today in the news, right, you know, Putin visits China and they proclaim partnership lasting for generations. I'm like, oh, probably it was, you know, the timing had to do something with it. Which means that also we need to revisit our China strategy as well. So a lot of homework for me, but before I go to introducing the speakers, I also want to say hi to everybody from my third, let's say, news since yesterday, right? Our third panelist, a dear friend from McKinsey, sent me a message. I need to cancel last minute. My daughter decided that she will come to this world 2 weeks earlier than planned. I'm like, okay, really happy for you. So congrats, Dinu, and you know, welcome, Ella. Welcome to the fun world of operations. And you know, then we talked with Nikita, and you know, how you don't get excited with all these things happening and plans changing all the time. So simple enough, right? You know, we are boring, right? In operations, we are so used to it, so we need to adapt. So I think it's a bit of a long introduction to the panel, but I hope I introduce some of the topics that we will try to touch. We have extreme pleasure to welcome Erdzan Presova, Business and Strategy Manager for Kia Europe.
Correct.
By the way, the only person that ever dunked over me. No, very competitive person, one of the stars of the cadet basketball team long time ago, and truly one of the proud Macedonians in automotive business for more than 15 years. Welcome, Erdzan. And we have Hans here with us, also one of the esteemed professionals. You know, we heard about Costal. Hans is having the dual role like everybody, right? You know, it's not enough to have only one job, right? You know, you need to have at least two. So Hans is the Chief Operating Officer for the full Costal Group, but also president for European business. So I'm hoping that we will try to illustrate some of the things which are going on at the moment. Okay. I know we had a script for this one and we changed it, right? Plan A, B, C, right? You know, but we will improvise as always. But let me start with Erdzan. You know, congrats on yet another profit year, right? You know, Hyundai and Kia for me are one of the surprises, I would say, in automotive industries in the last 6-7 years, right? You know, since you took the title of #3 producer in the world, Do you know that, right? You know Toyota, Volkswagen, and then it's Hyundai, so no Detroit 3, no other German OEMs, it's them, right? You know, so I think they're really killing it, especially in Europe. You know, they grew 18% last year, I think, and they're one of the few actually OEMs which is fully utilized, meaning that they're producing at capacity more than 300,000 cars in Europe and over half a million engines. So right. The question is, how do you do it? Everybody's complaining, everybody's crying. You know, businesses in Europe is bad. How do you do it?
Well, first of all, thanks for the introduction, and I'm really pleased to be here with you. You make a good point. I mean, we've been riding a wave of success for a while now. And it's been going since, I would say, well, 2005 onward. And to be frank, we really thrive in times of challenge. And we really cherish those moments as a company and as a group. Back in the World Economic Crisis in 2008, this is where we did the first jump in terms of performance and sales results. Literally within 3 years of that period, gaining a 1% market share in a very stable and very, I would say, saturated European market. Following that, now with the COVID crisis, with the semiconductor crisis, we also made another leap forward. And yeah, we broke the 600,000 mark for the first time last year, reached record profits, and in also a very challenging environment. Now, how did we achieve that is a bit more complex, so it doesn't happen overnight. It's a mix of the way we do business and the culture of Kia. So first and foremost, during those quantitative growths, we had not focused that much on quality. So what we did from 2013 onward is really focus on improving our capacity, improving our throughputs, building infrastructure in terms of sales and service networks, but also work on our CRM system, digitalizing our operations, and improving overall customer centricity. So we were building the foundations for a sustainable growth in the future as well. Now, we are also a very lean organization, and we're very agile, so that helps us move quite quickly from assessment to decision, to proposal to decision, to execution. It goes quite fast. Just to give you a fun fact, on a profitability level per head of employee, we are #1 in the world. So it's Kia, Hyundai, and Ferrari afterwards. So in that sense, that's one of our, I would say, keys to success. And now, finally, once the pandemic hit, what we did is, at that time, we really got closer to our customers, to our partners, but also to our suppliers. And our factory in Žilina is arguably one of the best factories that Hyundai has in the world. And what the engineering teams, what the procurement teams there did was really get closer to our suppliers and to that level to really work on a micro level on what we need and how do we match capacity, production ability, and what we needed at that time. Even going that far as to help with liquidity, help with supporting survival, literally, within that period. So we believe that those, let's say, relationships that we have, both with our customers, with our retailers, with our partners, and most importantly, our suppliers, are our keys to success throughout those challenging times. And we try to build on that going forward.
No, you're not giving away all of your secrets, but I have some follow-up questions on this one that I will come back. But you know, Erdzan mentioned COVID. Hans, I can imagine we've been through a lot of things since COVID, and it's what, 4 years, right? You know, it seems like it was yesterday or last century, or depends how you look at it. But since that, right, you know, the chip crisis, the plastic resin shortages, Red Sea, Houthis, etc., etc. So can you share some war stories? I think war stories in terms of, what did you learn during that period? What made you stronger?
Yeah, well, in fact, it's true, it's 4 years ago since COVID. On the one side, I don't know how you feel, but on the one side, it feels like it was yesterday. On the other side, it feels like it was already ages ago. So it's really indifferent. Well, and the last 4 years have been, in many dimensions, crazy. And I'm sure you can all relate to this. I want to pick out probably two things. It's not going to be COVID. Many people picked on this already. I want to pick out two things that I think, at least for me personally, but for sure for my responsibility and our organization really had a significant impact. I'll start with the Ukrainian war, because I guess sometimes I feel we don't talk about it enough anymore. Just to give you guys a few numbers that you probably can relate to. As you maybe know or don't, Costa, we do have, I never what to say, we have two facilities, we have two facilities in the Ukraine, and we are not on the western part, we are right in the middle of the country, southeast of Kiev, for your orientation. And we have around about 950 associates there. Of the 950 associates, around about 308 are eligible now to be pulled in to do their service, whatever that means to that individual. Of the 308, 266 received already a kind of letter to prepare them to be ready anytime soon. And you all guys can follow the news. Ukraine is looking for another, 500, 600,000 soldiers. Gives you an impression of what the pressure is there on an individual level as well as on an organization level. I have already 70 employees that are already serving, and we have lost already 2 individuals. I mean, just these numbers, that's just 1,700 kilometers away from here. So it's in the middle of Europe, if you want to say so. I will never forget that day in February 2022 when that started. And I admit it, I'm the first one to admit it, on the day before it happened. And if I'm the only one to admit this, I was in that camp to say this is not going to happen. I was convinced this is not going to happen. It was, for me, unthinkable. Well, how wrong can you be? So, just 1,700 kilometers away from here, and just to bridge to the gentleman who was sitting here before, freedom of speech, super important. I agree with many things. But just these few numbers I've been reading to you guys is telling you that freedom of speech is important. Well, peace is probably more important. If there is no peace, and I'm not making this political, I'm not going to get involved into this. It's just the circumstances are what the circumstances are. It's so terrible. We can't do business. People cannot live their lives. They cannot make their own decisions. It's terrible from A to Z. So it's really, really, for me, that was probably the negative highlight of the last 4 years. And you know what? The most frustrating thing of all this is there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. I'm in contact with these guys all the time with my people there, but there's nothing senseful I can do. That's the one thing. And the second thing for sure was the semiconductor crisis. As we are a fairly large company that uses a ton of those. Looking at my dear customer here, that was really a struggle. When that all kicked in, that really drove a curveball on all of us. And I would say some of the lessons learned I had from them is that, one, you should never feel too safe about the supply chain. So, what you thought is safe, you can learn different the next day. Number 2 is what I've also learned on this is we're all in the same boat. And I really say this with all the respect to my customer. We all in the same boat, don't forget this, because if we don't give you any parts, you will not sell any vehicles. What I've also learned is that if it really has to happen, there is a strong bond between suppliers, in our case tier 1 suppliers, and our customers, because if we wouldn't have not figured this out together, I don't think there would have been any winner at the table. Yeah, and of course, also a lessons learned is that, not talking about winners and losers, but our customers, the OEMs, they had that magic choice of, with a limited supply of parts that can be more or less used for everything, to build that kind of portfolio that suits them the best. As a supplier, I don't have that choice. I have to supply what's necessary or what I got asked for. And I know many of my colleagues of different suppliers, and they had a tough time with being directed to pick and choose whatever is wanted instead of what was contracted on. But if you have a limited supply, what choice do you have? So that was a difficult period of time for all of us, but I would say more difficult for the suppliers.
Thanks for that. I mean, certainly clearly remember that period, and maybe we can follow up. But before we go to the debate of single source versus dual source and, long or short, etc., question to Erdzan. I mean, back to Hyundai and the electrification as a secular force in the automotive industry at the moment. By the way, Honda and Hyundai are Hyundai actually, right? It's one of the silent winners in that race. I can say, right? There is a lot of talk about Tesla, etc. But just check the stats of who is selling more EVs than the traditional OEMs. But it's a completely different product, right? It's a completely different value chain, right? It's supply chain, end to end, etc. Right? So how do you design that, or what are the differences between the traditional ICE and the EV?
Well, first of all, I mean, as an industry, we've chosen EVs as the future, right? So we're already on that path, and we're moving forward. As you may be aware, the major component of an EV is the battery, right? So it accounts for more than 30%, on average, 30% of the value of the car. So, costs are paramount. So controlling those costs is really key to success. And frankly speaking, in terms of cost parity between EVs and ICE, we still haven't reached it. Also, in terms of just going to the war in Ukraine and all the challenges that happened, that led to also a deterioration of the total cost of ownership of EVs. And total cost of ownership is something that usually fleet companies look into when they do their purchases, so the overall life cycle usage, not only purchase, but also usage of the vehicle. And this is the time where the EVs and the TCOs there deteriorated beyond. Otherwise, it was actually working in the right direction. We definitely believe this is the right way to go forward. And as it was mentioned earlier by the panelists, this is the way forward. And both legislation and development are drivers of this change. So for us, going back to the cost is going to be key to kind of manage that ratio and try to do the best out of it. I mean, we've had very good products. We've invested a lot in our product portfolio. In the next couple of years, we'll be launching a plethora of new EV models. We've had success with the current ones. So the EV6 was the car of the year in Europe, EV9 the world car of the year. So all very successful models. However, the catalyst, the driver of their change was governments and regulation, right? And from that perspective, we would rather move towards a natural demand rather than a stimulated demand. And this is where we look for research and developments and innovation to accelerate. I mean, we've made strides in terms of battery technology, battery management systems, and the qualities of those parts. However, I mean, this will bring us definitely closer to that user experience that we are accustomed to the one easy to use vehicle as the ICE is, and such needs to be the experience when you're using an EV. And so the developments there are going to drive the change, and we look forward to those. On the other side, we as a traditional OEM are at a disadvantage a bit compared to the pure EV manufacturers, just because we have to maintain those two lines. It's both ICEs and EVs. So we have to diversify in that sense and still be on the cutting edge of development of the EVs while maintaining all of our ICE, petrol, diesel, hybrids, plug-in hybrid vehicles in operation and technologies. So, however, we're making good progress. I think we're staying competitive and staying on top of the game, and we'll look forward to doing that in the future. So, but it is key that we provide that ease of use and peace of mind and address that range anxiety with the customers, throughout this period.
Okay. Hans, are you doing any turbo onboard chargers for Kia yet? Or?
No, it's all fine. I mean, Mr. Costa was here upstage where he was asked also, what's the future, EV, not EV? Well, the short answer of this is I don't know. Nobody does. But I agree wildest with him that, we'll see, but let the market decide instead of putting too much governance over it is always rather a good idea than a bad idea.
Yeah. Can you reflect a little bit on the ongoing relationship between the OEMs and Tier 1 or Tier N suppliers, right? I mean, as a context, right? These guys are making huge profits in the last 2-3 years, which also myself being in the supplier shoes, we cannot probably be in the same sentence there. I think there was some, consensus in the automotive industry that, once the OEM are making money, that the suppliers will make money, and in the bad times we will go through the suffering together. But it seems that has changed right now. Can you comment on that?
Well, I could collaborate on this all day. How much time do you have, guys? No.
20 minutes.
No, but I mean, the facts first. Most of our customers, one of his Kia, are all, listed companies, so they have to show what, the money they make and whatnot. In the supply landscape, that's a little different. So, but these numbers are obvious, and it's probably fair to say that, many of the OEMs had really record years, record quarters, it's easy to read, you can Google it. I can say this much, we didn't. There was something in common, and many suppliers didn't. Out of that very reason that, we don't have that, and I mentioned this in the first point, we don't have that luxury of pick and choose whatever we would like to sell because it's best for our portfolio or best for our P&L. We need to pick and choose whatever our customer tells us that is what we need, the parts that we need. And fundamentally what the supply crisis did, or the semiconductor crisis did, is it fundamentally made the market smaller because there was just fewer semiconductors available, and so fewer cars were to be built. Well, as a normal Tier 1 supplier, you're really depending on volume. It's that simple. Volume is the it. Of course, product mix is it too, but volume is much more important. Well, with our customers, it's volume too, but there the product mix is of essence. Now, we got faced with, whatever we need to deliver, but it's in any case less volume, so that was not good for us. On the other side, what I also have to affect is that some of the semiconductors got twice as expensive or 3 times as expensive, and we have many, almost to say all our customers really supported us. I really need to say we found good agreements to cover these extra costs, because without that coverage, it would have been impossible to keep the supply chain up and running. I think that's a fair statement. So, good agreements. And you know how this is. You think you know your customer until really bad times come up. Then you really start to know each other. And it's a fair statement to say that we have, not in all cases, but in many cases, strengthened the relationship to our customer base throughout this very difficult period. Well, one of the questions is always, and I got this asked all the time, is the end consumer, or whoever needs to pay, willing to pay for more resilience in the supply chain? Besides the fact that this is a really difficult question, this is just like if you ask the end consumers, do you prefer less sugar in your yogurt, or should it be less fat, or should it be more healthy, or should it be better for the CO2 footprint or whatnot? Everybody with a microphone in his or her face going to say yes, of course. But when you stand in front of the fridge and you pick and choose, what do you pick? You pick the sweet and fatty stuff. You know, that's the reality. So exactly, that are the final customers are willing to pay more money for more resilience in the supply chain? Well, if you ask them, they're going to say yes. If it's going to become true, it's going to be a no. It's that simple, because it's an intangible thing. What is more resilience in the supply chain mean? Well, they just realize this if whatever they want to buy is not available anymore. Then, of course, they're willing to pay for it. But once everything is running, it's running, so they're not willing to pay for this. So this is what makes this question so difficult. In the end of the day, and you mentioned it, cost matters. Like it or not, and we need to be cost efficient also in the supply chain.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of the fundamental differences in being successful versus not, and especially touching on the highly utilized facilities that Kia has. So let me try to switch, and we have some interesting question coming from the audience as well, but I'll connect it with, I think, your favorite topic, Erdzan, right? Favorite, quote unquote, right? ESG and the impacts, or let me frame it, you know, what's driving your investment decisions, especially right now in Europe? I mean, a lot of is going on in terms of industrial policies, both in the States and in Europe, you know, tariff, non-tariff barriers, etc. But focus more on what's coming in the next two, three years in terms of environmental, etc. So, what's your thought on this one?
Well, it's something that keeps me busy these days, I have to say, in the last 2 years already. But yeah, just stepping back a bit, where this is coming from. Obviously, the European Green Deal that was approved back in 2020. It's one aspect of it, and it had an overarching goal. It has an overarching goal of making the European Union climate neutral by 2050. Now, we have also the Fit for 55 package that is addressing greenhouse gases, and it aims to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases by 55% by 2030. So within these two packages, there's a plethora of legislation, directives, regulation that requires OEMs, manufacturers, and suppliers alike to report on, well, to first of all adhere to reporting and compliance requirements, to report on their supply chains, report on different aspects of the overall value chain. We just recently mapped out kind of the overall legal landscape and how what can impact us in the coming years. And we've identified close to 70 different regulations that impact our business in various shapes and forms. And I'll just mention a few that might be also quite, I would say, would relate as local manufacturers, local suppliers would relate to. One being the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, so-called, and this is where the OEMs, suppliers alike, the companies are required to report on how their business impacts the environment, right? Next one being CS-DDD, or the due diligence, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which is looking into the supply chains and the human rights, whether they're being adhered to, preventing child labor and such. Then we have legislations like the ELVR, the end-of-life vehicle regulation, the life cycle assessments, battery passports, vehicle passports, you name it, everything that's related to kind of tracking all the raw materials, as it was mentioned earlier, from well to tank. But basically what it says is, starting from the sourcing of material to the building, to the usage, till the end of life of vehicle, we are required to track all the raw materials, how they're being, how much of it is put in the car, how they're being recycled, reused, repurposed, how the end-of-life treatment is being done, and how much of it is being reutilized into the production of the new vehicle. So if you look at it, all this regulation has the great intention, right? Is to bring a level playing field, as it was mentioned before by Mr. Kostal. And however, we need to bear in mind that over-regulation is a danger that we may step into. And all of these requirements are presenting a very large burden on the OEMs and on the entire supply chain. So is the customer willing to pay for that? That's a good question. But we have to do it, and we need to adhere to that. And this is what's going to drive our investment decisions, right? So we need to localize a lot of the supply chain in Europe. We need to, this is going to drive our manufacturing decisions. This is going to drive our relationship with our suppliers. Is what we're required to be supplied from where, because we need to adhere to Euro 1 regulation that requires us to produce in Europe. And just to give you an example of how that impacts our business, just recently, at the end of last year, in France, the Green Industry Deal was introduced, and in essence, it's imposing a carbon tax. So you get incentivized for the sales of your EVs based on the carbon footprint of your vehicle. So we would have two very similar vehicles produced by Kia and Hyundai, one being produced in Europe, the other one in Korea. One gets the incentives, the other one doesn't. So that puts a lot of pressure on us to manage where we source our cars from, where we source our parts from, the batteries, and all the necessary equipment or parts to build those vehicles. However, that comes, again, at what we mentioned earlier, at a cost. And this is what we need to be diligent about managing, because we believe that the customer doesn't deserve the extra charge. We want to provide that same experience between ICE, and that transition to EVs need to come natural, but it needs that boost from the governments as well. However, yeah, that's the driver, I would say, in bottom line driver of how we make our investment decisions and how our relationship with our suppliers develops.
I have two follow-up questions. One of them will be for the end, but trying to wake up some of the people in the audience. Let me try to see if I understood what you just elaborated with a lot of popular buzzwords in the industry there. But let's say if I'm a humble, small supplier located in a non-European Union country called Macedonia, would I be able to sell to you in the next 2-3 years?
We are looking for European suppliers, absolutely. And we are looking for suppliers, including Macedonia as well. And as you're familiar with, we are actually looking, and we're always looking to expand our supplier base in Macedonia. We had a project running last year just on that topic, and we already collaborate. We collaborate with Johnson Matthey. We collaborate with Costal that already produce in Macedonia. So we definitely look forward to more investments in the region to be able to benefit for that local production and overall be compliant with the requirements that are imposed on us.
Good. We have 9 minutes. The second one is for the end. Hans, maybe on a different topic, but not so far away. There was a lot of talk about technology, artificial intelligence, and what strategy should be implemented, etc., etc. How do you see operations and this type of technologies going together, or what's your crystal ball there in terms of adjusting your strategy and utilizing some of the most advanced technologies to be more resilient, adaptable, or deliver?
It's a good question. Well, the fortunate part is that fundamentally I believe at Costal we really have a good strategy, not just for operations, for everything. I think our strategy, we just worked on it, that is giving us all good guidance. Fundamentally, to really come down to what this means to operations and supply chain and whatnot, I think we always did and continue to put more effort in fundamentally, from the region to the region. Of course, there's going to be exceptions of it. Some stuff is just not available in Europe or in the Americas, or maybe sometimes even in Asia. A very good example are the semiconductors. You can long say from the region for the region. Well, there isn't enough semiconductors within Europe that would satisfy the demand, not at all, because Europeans and maybe also to a certain degree the Americans, we've missed that train that has left the station a while ago, and that's really strong in Asian hands. And I'm not saying this is particularly bad. It is just what it is. Of course, what I would love to say is that, we are, from a supply chain point of view, free wherever we want to source without any political complications, let's call it that way. But that's just not reality, okay? That's just not what it is. For the sake of all my customers, I need to be very careful. I need to be balanced. I cannot put too many eggs in one basket. I cannot source everything from out of China. Just imagine what would happen if, picture it by yourself. You know exactly what I mean. So this is the reason why we really try to follow up as close as possible from the region for the region. Again, within limits. But again, there are exceptions to it, and some stuff can only be sourced or organized globally. But fundamentally, if I read our customers, if I read the political landscape in which we operate, I can see that viewing everything purely out of global is not fitting anymore. Because that one-fits-all thing that, was, 10, 15 years ago, I feel like we left that stage. We have to accept that, Asia, China is a little different. It works a little different. And I'm not saying good or bad. It's just to accept the fact the way they make business, the way they have their understanding is a little different. And who am I to tell the Chinese people how to conduct business within China? This is nonsense, really. And some of our dear customers also accepted the fact that, we need to see this different. Same thing in the Americas, same thing in Europe. So I think the three regions have differences. They need to be run a little different. Regulation is very different from region to region, so the business circumstances are different. So therefore, our fundamental strategy of really running the world with fundamentally three regions is appropriate and good. And from the region, for the region, is something, with exceptions, that fits us, I assume so, fairly well.
Yeah, and maybe just a follow-up. Region for the region it seems to be the dominant one across the industry, or emerging as the most effective one. But in terms of systems or managing data or managing demand and having that transparency, do you see a trend of maybe integrating the systems across the value chain, where OEMs will be sharing actively data with you, so you can, or it's still dog-eat-dog type of environment?
You know, what I would love to say is that we have figured out the system that I know perfectly well what happens today and tomorrow within our Chinese operations, and I have super transparency about the data. Our ERP system runs just like a glass ball and whatnot. You know, who am I? I mean, you would be it's not true. And artificial intelligence is going to help us run that mass data for the future much better and much more efficient, no doubt. And I also agree that suppliers and customers, especially when it gets to demand of the final customer and market trends and mega trends, we need to work much closer together with data to understand the trends and to be prepared for it, because it's of no value if my customer understood the mega trend but didn't tell any one of the suppliers, and how do you serve that? Well, not at all. It's that simple. But are we there yet? No. No. It's still difficult, but I think there's a common agreement, not just here, there's a common agreement in the market that data intelligence, understanding the data, creating knowledge out of mass data is the it for the future. Artificial intelligence is going to help us, but there's a long way for us to go. There's a long way for us to go.
Thank you. 3 minutes out, final one. You know it's coming, right? But it's not from me, it's from the audience, so I'll read it. Given anti-globalization in Europe and the role of the East in the EV industry, would Kia be looking towards investing in battery cell production in the West? Or let me add a little bit of a twist, because we had really good sessions in the morning. What this guy sitting in the audience need to do for you to invest here in Macedonia?
Well,
I'm now interested in that answer.
Well, first of all, looking at how things have developed, we'll be looking. First of all, going to your first question, battery manufacturing, we're not in it. So we work with our suppliers for that purpose. We have long-standing agreements with multiple suppliers on that, and multiple manufacturers of batteries. We don't have the R&D, we don't have the background, so we're definitely not in that game. So, however, most of our supplier partners are already investing in Europe. So from that perspective, I think that alignment in terms of what is required for us to do business together, it's already there, right? That understanding, let's say big picture. And I fully agree with you. We need to do a much more work to align on those predictions going forward. And frankly speaking, to do business in Macedonia, I don't think that's a problem, right? I think we're already looking for supply out of Macedonia at this point. So whether a company invests here or in the region, we are willing to work with them. And we are, as long as it fits our requirements, as long as it fits the necessary, I would say supply standards, our manufacturing standards, and I don't see really a blocker from that perspective. So we're really looking forward to, and as I said, we were scanning additionally the market last year, and we continue to do so in the future for companies that we can extend our business relationship with going forward. So as I mentioned, the regulation forces us, but also the cost factor forces us, right? And we think that we have very good quality labor, efficient manufacturing, and Macedonia provides a very good both cost base, but also a base with a qualified workforce that allows the likes of Costal, the likes of Johnson Matthey, to invest here and yeah, work with OEMs like Kia and Hyundai. Yeah.
Okay, maybe. You just said maybe, right?
Maybe. Not really.
There is a still chance. Okay, I think we are up, and I hope we managed to bring the boring life of operations a little bit closer to you. And yeah, thank you.